I know you guys watch these videos to relax or at bedtime, so before starting I would like you guys to subscribe the channel and let me know in the comments down below from where and at what time you are watching this video. Let's begin. It started on a Sunday hike like any other. I live near the edge of the Pine Haven Forest in Oregon, and it's my ritual to go for a solo hike every weekend, headphones in, mind off. That day, though, something felt off. The usual peaceful chirping of birds was gone, the wind seemed hushed, and there was an eerie silence that made the crunch of each step painfully loud. About 4 miles in, just off the trail, I saw something odd nestled beneath a bush. A small black USB flash drive with a cracked casing and faint red smudges that looked too dark to be dirt. I probably should have left it, but curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up and tucked it in my jacket. Back home, after a hot shower and some hesitation, I plugged the USB into my old laptop, the one I never used for anything important. It had one single folder labeled Watching. Inside were dozens of video files, all with names like 01_entry through 54_entry, and the last one titled _open. Of course, I opened the first one. It was grainy footage of a woman in her late 20s, sitting in a dimly lit room, whispering into the camera. She looked terrified. "If you found this," she said, eyes darting around, "do not watch the rest. Bury this. Burn this. Forget this. They're listening. They can come through screens." Naturally, I watched the next video. Each entry got worse. The woman, who later identified herself as Elise Hart, looked more disheveled each time. She spoke of them watching her, entering her dreams, and warping reality. By the 12th video, her walls were covered in pages of symbols, and she seemed sleep-deprived and paranoid. She mentioned an entity called the Echo Man, who, according to her, lives in digital frequencies and can bleed into reality through sound. By the 30th video, Elise had stopped warning and started pleading. "He mimics your voice. He learns you. He knows you." I watched until video 41. That's when my laptop screen flickered and the audio cut out. I assumed it was a glitch until I heard my own voice coming from the speakers, whispering my name. I slammed the laptop shut. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I threw the USB drive into a public dumpster downtown and factory reset my laptop. But the damage had been done. The following night, I received a call from my own number. When I picked up, all I heard was heavy breathing and the faint whisper, "Found you." I stopped going on hikes. I stopped sleeping. Shadows in my apartment started stretching too far, staying too long. I tried to forget about Elise and the Echo Man, but then came the text. Always at 3:03 a.m., just one word repeated, "Echo." I moved cities. I changed my number. I even smashed the old laptop. But some nights, I still hear my own voice whispering from the dark corners of my new apartment. Last night, I found a sticky note on my fridge. "I live alone." It said 02_entry. And when I looked in the mirror, my reflection smiled back at me. I didn't. The sticky note on my fridge was identical in handwriting to the ones Elise used in the videos. Bold black marker with uneven pressure, like someone wrote it in a panic. I yanked it off and turned every light on in the apartment, searching every room, closet, and cupboard. Nothing. No signs of a break-in. Just that same oppressive silence from the forest, now invading my home. I sat on the couch, clutching the note like it might bite me until my phone buzzed. A text. No caller ID. Just the word, "Ready?" I didn't reply. But the instant I locked the phone, my TV turned on by itself. Static hissing, then a frozen frame from video 42. Elise, eyes bloodshot and face twitching, stared into the camera. "I see you now," she whispered. Then the screen went black. Just before it shut off, I saw my face, not on the screen but reflected in the glass. My mouth was moving, whispering something I couldn't hear while I sat frozen in silence. I launched off the couch and unplugged everything: the TV, the router, even my microwave. I didn't want anything transmitting, receiving, or echoing. That night, I dreamt in static. It wasn't like a normal dream. It was more like a broadcast. My vision filled with flickering grayscale and harsh noise, and in the center of the screen was Elise, crouched in a corner of a room I didn't recognize, staring directly into me. Not at me, into me. I felt her gaze scraping across my mind like claws. Then she screamed. A guttural, raw scream that turned into my voice halfway through. My own scream. I woke up with blood in my ears. After that, the lines between reality and digital started to blur. My phone would ring with my voice on the other end, narrating my thoughts before I even had them. I tested it once by thinking a sentence silently, and seconds later I received a voicemail, my voice whispering the exact same line I just thought. It wasn't just a haunting, it was infiltration. I started researching. Elise wasn't in any databases. No missing persons, no social media, nothing. I contacted a few online forums specializing in the paranormal, but whenever I typed about the Echo Man, my messages would autocorrect or be replaced with strings of random numbers and symbols. I posted screenshots, they vanished the next day. I was being silenced. And then came the tapes. They were VHS tapes this time, placed one by one outside my apartment door every night for a week. Each labeled with a new entry number, continuing where the USB left off. I didn't have a VCR, but one appeared in my closet the same day the tapes started. I don't even own a closet shelf. Each tape was worse than the last. Not just Elise anymore. Others. People I didn't recognize. A child speaking in tongues, a man cutting off his eyelids while humming lullabies, a woman painting mirrors black while something whispered behind her. The last tape showed my building, my floor, my door, from the hallway. I called the police. They arrived, looked around, found nothing. I showed them the tapes. They saw blank static. I showed them the notes. They saw sticky pads with scribbles. They left me with a referral to a therapist. I booked an appointment. She canceled. Now the whispering never stops. It's under every sound, the fridge humming, the air conditioner, the buzz of my phone. It all carries a frequency. And the Echo Man lives in frequencies. Last night, I screamed into a pillow for hours just to hear my own voice drown him out. But I know it won't work, because today my laptop, completely wiped and disconnected, powered on by itself. It displayed one folder, Welcome Underfit, inside. A single file, 55 under entry, and a text file, You brought me home. I haven't opened it yet, but I can hear my voice echoing from the speakers, whispering things I haven't said yet. I think Elise wasn't the last entry. I think I am. Let's move on to the next one. My dead brother's black box won't stop playing messages. When my older brother Jamie died in a plane crash last year, they said there were no survivors. No bodies, just wreckage. The flight had gone down in a remote mountain range, and all they found intact was the aircraft's black box. The airline returned it to my family as part of some bizarre closure ceremony. My parents couldn't bear to look at it, so they shoved it in a closet. But me? I was curious. I needed answers. The black box itself was sleek, smaller than I expected. Orange casing. No visible damage. Just a label with the flight number, AR308. Jamie was the co-pilot. One night, after a few drinks and too much grief, I pulled it out. It had a single button. When I pressed it, static filled the room. Then came Jamie's voice. Flight AR308 requesting final clearance. Come. Steady. Then a whisper, not from the tower. Indecipherable. Wrong. Do you hear that? Jamie again, this time unsure. A shriek followed. Distorted, inhuman. The black box shut off on its own. The next morning it worked again. Jamie, it's in the clouds. Then another voice, clearer now. What is remembered lives. The shriek looped until I unplugged everything. That night, static woke me. The box was on. Jamie whispered, help me. It knows I remember. I buried it under my bed. But it kept broadcasting, through my phone, TV, even the neighbor's baby monitor. Jamie's voice got stranger. Sometimes it was mine, saying things I hadn't said. I started dreaming of the plane. Frozen passengers. Jamie staring out the window. It's feeding. Every listener gives it shape. The box wasn't a recorder. It was a beacon. It disappeared from under my bed, reappeared on my desk. The red light blinked. Thank you for remembering me, the voice said. Not Jamie. Not me. I tried to destroy it. It wouldn't burn. Wouldn't break. Strangers emailed. I heard it too. Mom called. Her voice was warped. Jamie says you're next. I recorded myself sleeping. At 3 a.m. I sat up and said, AR309 is cleared for takeoff. There is no AR309, but I think there will be. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from my own number. Your seat has been confirmed. The black box showed my room, but wrong. Furniture rearranged. Shadows moving. Reversing one of Jamie's messages revealed, you brought it through. I dreamed I was in the cockpit with Jamie. His skin was translucent. Outside fog. Shapes moving. One looked like me. I woke up. My window was open. A boarding pass lay on the sill. AR309. Seat 23A. My name. The airline confirmed no such flight. But others had called. Mentioned Jamie. A message board contact, Wraith Writer, reviewed the audio. Leave, he said. Not your apartment. This world. His account vanished the next day. Every night now I hear engines overhead. No planes show up on radar. My apartment vibrates. Then the countdown started. On the black box, 23 minutes and 59 seconds. The final file was called final_approach. Jamie's voice again. Warped. We all board eventually. No one forgets forever. I threw the box into the river. It was waiting on my bed when I got home. Still ticking. 17 minutes and 14 seconds. I don't know if this will help. Maybe writing slows it down. Maybe you can stop it. But I think the black box doesn't want to be destroyed. It wants to be remembered. So if you're reading this, I'm sorry. You just listened. Let's move on to the next one. The mirror in my apartment is not reflecting me anymore. It started 2 weeks ago on a Thursday night when I came home from work and passed the hallway mirror like I always do. Only this time I noticed something off. A delay. Just half a second, but it was there. I waved my hand. The reflection followed, slightly late. I blamed it on exhaustion. By Saturday it got worse. The mirror me blinked when I didn't, tilted its head when mine was still. I stopped looking into it entirely, but I couldn't avoid it forever. It's mounted right across from my bathroom door. One night, I caught it staring at me when I passed. I wasn't facing it, but in the reflection I was. Eyes locked forward, smiling. I covered the mirror with a blanket the next morning. That night I heard rustling. When I got up, the blanket was folded neatly at the base of the mirror. The glass was spotless. Then things started moving in my apartment. Drawers I didn't open. Lights turned off when I left them on. My reflection wasn't just different, it was active, separate, watching. I tried filming it, but every time I hit record, the footage showed only my regular reflection. The lag, the smile, it was all gone. Just me, looking tired. But then came the whispers. Faint at first, like someone murmuring in the next room. I thought it was the neighbors until I realized the sound was coming from inside the mirror. Let me in. That's what it said. Over and over. Night after night. I moved to sleep on the couch. Turned the mirror to face the wall. That seemed to help, until I found handprints on the opposite wall the next morning. From the inside. Now the reflection doesn't show my apartment anymore. It shows something else. A darker version. Rotting wallpaper. Flickering lights. Me but not me. Paler. Grinning. Last night I woke up to a knock. The mirror had turned itself back. I watched in horror as my reflection stepped away from the glass. It didn't mimic me. It just stood there. Then it turned around. I saw what was behind it. It wasn't my apartment. It was a corridor lined with mirrors. All dark. All empty. Except one. Mine. I don't know what it wants. I just know it's getting closer. My reflection isn't in the mirror anymore. But sometimes I catch it watching me from reflective surfaces. My phone screen, the kettle, a puddle. I can feel it now. It's behind my eyes. And it's smiling. I visited a glass repair shop today. Told the guy I needed the mirror removed. He chuckled and asked what was wrong with it. I hesitated. It's not working right. He looked at me like I was insane. Maybe I am. But he still agreed to come by. He never showed up. I called the shop. They told me he never left. Said he was still at the front desk when I spoke to him. That night, there were fingerprints on every reflective surface in my apartment. Long, spindly prints that smeared toward me. I decided to sleep at my friend Ben's place. I didn't tell him everything, just that my place gave me the creeps. He's the type that thinks mirrors hold spiritual energy, so he covered all the ones in his apartment for me. It helped. Until I went to the bathroom and saw my reflection in the window. I waved. I didn't. Ben didn't believe me. Not until the same thing happened to him. He called me into the kitchen and pointed at the microwave door. Inside the reflection he was moving, pouring coffee, smiling. But he was standing beside me in silence. He asked me to leave the next morning. I went to a hotel. No mirrors. But I made a mistake. I brought my phone. That night I woke up to the screen glowing. The front camera was on, recording, and I was in frame. So was something behind me. It looked like me, but its eyes were hollow. Skin cracked. Lips split in a perpetual smile. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back at the phone, the recording had been deleted. I smashed the screen. I smashed every reflective object I owned. But the thing still finds a way to reach me. It whispers through faucet handles, the glint of keys, the shimmer of the TV in standby mode. Let me in. Let me in. Let me in. I finally went back to the apartment. Just to end it, I'd take a hammer and shatter the mirror. I didn't care if it cursed me forever. When I got inside, the place was freezing. Silent. The mirror was uncovered. Waiting. As I stepped toward it, the reflection showed my apartment burning, flames licking the ceiling, ash swirling. In the middle of the fire stood the other me, smiling. "You're already here," it said. I struck the glass with the hammer. It didn't break. Instead, cracks bloomed across my walls, floor, and ceiling. Not the mirror. My apartment. The mirror was the only solid thing left. I ran. I'm still running. But I saw it in my rearview mirror tonight. Grinning. I found a woman online, an antique dealer who specializes in mirror lore. Her name's Meredith. She asked me to describe the mirror, and when I did, she went silent for a long time. Then she said, "That's a looking glass door. Not a mirror. A passage." She told me to meet her in person. We met at her cramped shop filled with dusty frames and warped glass. She pulled out an old leather-bound book. Inside was a sketch of the exact mirror I own, etched over 100 years ago. The caption read, "Gate of the Watcher. Reflection is permission." She said these doors were created to thin the veil between worlds, but they were never supposed to open. She asked if I had ever spoken to it. I hesitated, then remembered that night. The first whisper, "Let me in." She nodded grimly. "Then it's already halfway through. Let's move on to the next one. The house that watches." I never believed in haunted houses. Ghosts, curses, evil spirits, all of it sounded like bedtime stories to scare kids. But that changed the day I moved into 47 Hawthorne Lane. It was an old Victorian fixer-upper, priced suspiciously low. The realtor said it had been sitting empty for years. The previous owner vanished without a trace. No note, no clues. Just gone. I figured it was a chance to get a great deal and flip it for a profit. I didn't care about rumors. I needed a fresh start. The first night was unsettling, sure. The house creaked, floors groaned, and the wind seemed to whisper. But nothing I couldn't handle. Then I found the eyes. At first, they were just reflections. Two dark orbs flickering in the hallway mirror. I thought it was a trick of the light. But when I blinked, they blinked back. And they weren't mine. The eyes started appearing everywhere. On windows, in the dark corners of rooms, even in the kitchen backsplash tiles. Watching. Waiting. I tried to leave. But the front door wouldn't open. No matter how hard I pushed, pulled, or twisted the knob, it stayed locked tight. Phones didn't work. No signal. Even the landline was dead. That's when I heard the laughter. Soft, childlike giggles echoing through the walls. Sometimes close, sometimes distant. Always watching. Then came the dreams. I'd dream of the house's past. Children playing in the yard, a family laughing in the parlor, a man pacing in the study. But the scenes always ended with a scream and shadows swallowing everything. When I woke, the eyes were closer. Sometimes they stared from inside the closet or peered out from beneath the bed. I tried to smash the mirrors, but they just shattered into thousands of tiny shards, each reflecting a different pair of eyes. The house wasn't just watching. It was alive, and it wanted me. The next morning, I woke with a throbbing headache. Something had pressed its cold hand on my forehead in the night. I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone. I went to the kitchen to make coffee. As I flipped the switch, the lights flickered, and there, in the dim glow, I saw a child standing at the far end of the room. She was pale, wearing a faded dress, her hair tangled. She stared with hollow eyes. Then, just as suddenly, she vanished. I told myself it was a hallucination, the stress getting to me. But that night she came again, sitting at the foot of my bed, whispering my name. Days passed. The eyes grew bolder. They followed me from room to room. They watched me sleep. I found old diaries in the attic, entries by the missing owner. They spoke of a watcher, a presence living in the house, feeding on fear and sorrow. Do not look at the eyes, one diary warned. They see your soul and steal your light. I tried to ignore it. But one evening, while staring out the window, I saw the eyes on the other side, looking in at me from the darkness beyond the glass. Panicked, I covered every reflective surface, mirrors, windows, even the polished floors. But the laughter only grew louder. On the fifth night, the house changed. Walls bled dark, sticky shadows. Doors creaked open on their own, revealing rooms that shouldn't exist. The air thickened, filled with whispers. The child appeared everywhere, behind curtains, in photos, etched into the peeling wallpaper. She reached out, begging for help. I wanted to help, but I was trapped. The house's heart was a room I had never seen before, a hidden chamber behind the basement wall. I found it by following the sound of whispering. Inside was a dusty mirror, the biggest I had ever seen, covered with strange symbols. The eyes were inside the glass. They reached for me. I remember screaming as I tried to run. The house twisted, hallways stretching endlessly, doors leading nowhere. The mirror's surface rippled like water. The child's voice called out, "Stay with me." I knew then what the house wanted. It was a prison, and I was the next prisoner. Days later, the realtor came by to check on the property. No one answered. The house remained empty, except for the eyes that watched from the windows, and the faint sound of laughter echoing through the halls. Let's move on to the next one. The last guest. I never thought the tiny inn at the edge of town was anything special. Just a run-down place with creaky floors and outdated wallpaper. But it had a charm of its own, or so I thought. I arrived late on a rainy evening, the kind of rain that soaks you through in seconds. The inn's sign swung in the wind, creaking like a ghost's sigh. The door was unlocked, which was odd for this hour. Inside, the receptionist smiled, but her eyes were too bright, too empty. She handed me a key for room 6. "Enjoy your stay," she said, voice like silk but cold as ice. Room 6 was small, with a bed that sagged and a window that looked out onto the endless fog. I tried to call home, but my phone had no signal. Even the landline was dead. I shrugged it off. That night, I heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate. I peeked out, but the corridor was empty. The lights flickered. Then the knocking started. At first, gentle taps on the door. Then frantic pounding. I opened the door. No one there. Only muddy footprints leading down the stairs. Curious, I followed. The inn was bigger than it looked. Rooms I hadn't seen before, stretching endlessly. Doors locked tight except one. It was room 13. The door was cracked open. Inside, a circle of candles flickered. In the center, a chair and a man bound and gagged. His eyes met mine. Then he smiled. "Welcome," he whispered. I froze. Before I could react, the door slammed shut behind me. The man's smile widened beneath the gag. The candles flared, shadows danced wildly on the peeling walls. A voice echoed, cold, amused, "You've come just in time." I struggled against the door. "What? Why?" I managed to whisper. The man's eyes flickered with something dark. "This inn, it feeds on guests like you." The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing with an unseen heartbeat. The man pulled at his gag, desperate. I grabbed a candle holder and smashed it on the floor, sending shards everywhere. But the man only laughed, a hollow, chilling sound. Suddenly the lights went out. In the pitch black, whispers surrounded me. Names, promises, threats. I felt cold hands brush my skin, unseen fingers pulling at my clothes. A scream tore from my throat. The light snapped back on. The man was gone, but the room was changing. The walls melted into endless corridors lined with closed doors. I realized then I was trapped, and the inn was just beginning its game. Trapped in the twisting corridors of the inn, I wandered through endless doors, each leading to a new nightmare. One room showed a banquet, but all the guests were shadows, their faces blurred, voices a maddening chorus of whispers. Another held a mirror that didn't reflect me, but a stranger who begged for help, eyes pleading and hollow. I tried every door, every window, but none led outside. The inn was alive, a maze built from fear and despair. As hours, days, or maybe weeks passed, time lost meaning here, I realized the other guests were not gone. They were trapped too. I heard their voices, faint and broken, calling for escape. Some were angry, others resigned. One night I found a journal, bound in worn leather, tucked beneath the floorboards of a forgotten room. It belonged to the first owner, a man named Harold. His words told of a curse placed on the land, a pact made in desperation. The inn was a gateway, a prison for lost souls who couldn't leave until a new guest took their place. The last line chilled me. Beware the host. He watches, waits, and chooses who stays. I tried to hide, but the host always found me. He was a shadowy figure, face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, his smile cold and knowing. He whispered promises of freedom if I played his game, a contest of wit and fear. One wrong move and I'd be trapped forever. Desperate, I agreed. The challenges were cruel, riddles echoing in empty halls, illusions that twisted my mind, memories turned to nightmares. Each success brought a flicker of hope. Each failure pushed me deeper into the inn's dark heart. The final test led me to the grand dining hall, where a long table was set, but no food. The host sat at the head, motionless. He gestured to an empty chair opposite him. I sat, heart pounding. "Your turn," he said. A door behind him creaked open. I stood cautious. Inside was a mirror, my reflection smiling back, but with eyes that weren't mine. The host's voice echoed, "Will you join us or leave?" I knew the answer. To escape, I had to become part of the inn. But I refused. Summoning every shred of courage, I smashed the mirror. Glass exploded into 1,000 shards. The host screamed, a sound that shook the very foundations. The walls trembled, light flooding the inn for the first time in ages. Doors flew open. I ran. I awoke outside, drenched in rain. The inn stood silent behind me. I looked back. The windows were dark, the signs swaying gently. I was free. But sometimes in the corner of my eye, I see a flicker, a shadow, a pair of eyes watching. The inn never forgets, and someday it will call me back. Let's move on to the next one. Whispers from room 312. I never liked staying in hotels. Strange smells, weird noises, and the uncanny feeling that you're never truly alone. But business travel left me no choice. Last month, I checked into the Grand Magnolia Hotel, a towering building with polished marble floors, antique chandeliers, and a reputation for elegance. My room was 312. The first night was normal enough, until I heard it. A whisper so faint I thought it was the wind, but it wasn't. It was coming from inside the room. I told myself it was my imagination, the stress, the travel, jet lag. But the whispers continued, every night, calling my name. Then came the knocks, slow, deliberate, at the bedroom door. No one was there when I looked. One morning I found a note slipped under the door. It read, "Don't trust the mirror." The room had a large, ornate mirror hanging opposite the bed. I looked into it. My reflection smiled, but I wasn't smiling. That's when I realized the reflection wasn't mine. The reflection stared back with a smile that didn't reach its eyes. Its movements were slightly delayed but purposeful. When I raised my hand, it hesitated before mimicking the gesture. But then it did something that froze me. It winked. That night, the whispers grew louder, forming words, sentences, please. Help me. Set me free. I tried to ignore it, but sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the reflection's grin, wide and unnatural. I attempted to cover the mirror with a towel. But in the morning, it was folded neatly at the foot of the bed, as if placed there by an invisible hand. Desperate, I called the front desk. The receptionist was kind but distant, as if she was used to such calls. She told me room 312 had a history, a tragic one. Years ago, a guest named Eleanor stayed there. She disappeared without a trace, leaving only a diary behind. The hotel never rented out room 312 again until recently. I asked to switch rooms, but my request was denied. All fully booked, she said, eyes avoiding mine. That night, the knocking started again. But this time it was from inside the closet. I opened the door. Nothing but darkness. Then the reflection in the mirror changed. Eleanor's face appeared, pale and sorrowful. She mouthed the words, "Help me." I knew I had to do something. The next day, I found Eleanor's diary tucked inside the room's desk drawer. Her entries spoke of a mirror, a portal that trapped her inside the reflection world, a prison of glass and shadows. She described hearing voices, whispers that led her to madness. Her last entry was a desperate plea to anyone who found the diary: break the mirror. Set me free. I debated destroying the mirror but hesitated. That night, the reflection grew restless. It reached out, glass distorting as fingers pressed against the inside surface. The room grew cold. Suddenly, I was pulled toward the mirror, face to face with Eleanor trapped behind the glass, screaming silently. I grabbed a nearby lamp and smashed the mirror. Glass exploded, shards scattering like stars. The room brightened, warmth returning. Eleanor smiled, her image dissolving into light. Freedom at last. I left the hotel the next morning. Room 312 was vacant again. But sometimes when passing mirrors, I swear I see a fleeting smile, a whisper, a plea. And I wonder, did I really free her? Or did I let something else in? After breaking the mirror, I thought it was over. Eleanor was free. The room felt lighter, less suffocating. But that relief was short-lived. That night, as I lay in bed, the whispers returned. Louder this time. Not just from the room, but everywhere. The bathroom mirror, the shiny surface of my laptop, even the chrome fixtures in the hallway. And the reflections. They weren't quite right anymore. I caught glimpses of figures behind me, shadows lingering just out of sight. The hotel staff seemed different now. Their eyes hollow, their smiles forced. At breakfast, the woman at the front desk barely looked at me, muttering, "You shouldn't have done that." I asked her what she meant, but she vanished before I could get an answer. Every mirror now felt like a gateway, and every reflection a doorway for something watching me. I tried to check out immediately, but the elevator refused to move. The emergency stairs led to dead ends, hallways folding back on themselves like a maze. The hotel had changed. Or perhaps I had. Days passed, or hours, I lost count. Then I found a hidden room behind the wall panel in the hallway, filled with old photographs of guests, all with their eyes scratched out. At the center stood an old, cracked mirror with faint writing etched around its frame. "The broken glass never forgets." I understood then. Breaking Eleanor's mirror didn't free her. It shattered the barrier, releasing countless trapped souls, and binding me to the hotel forever. The whispers grew into voices. The reflections started to reach out. And I was no longer a guest. I was the prisoner. Let's move on to the next one. The last broadcast. I was a late-night radio host at WKRN, a small-town station with barely 100 listeners. My show, Midnight Voices, was more about sharing eerie stories and less about ratings. It was my escape, my quiet corner in the world. One rainy Thursday night, just past midnight, a caller named Evelyn came on air. Her voice was soft, trembling slightly, almost like a whisper lost in the static. She said she was calling from a town called Graybridge, miles away, where strange things had been happening. People disappearing without a trace, shadows moving at the edge of sight, and a radio tower that seemed to transmit messages no one could understand. I thought it was a prank. I joked, trying to lighten the mood. But Evelyn's voice grew serious, pleading even. She said the radio tower wasn't just sending signals, it was reaching into other worlds. Then mid-call the power flickered. The station went dead. My phone line went silent. The monitors blinked off. And then a voice, low, cold, and unmistakably real, whispered in my ear, "Help me." I snapped awake the next morning, drenched in sweat, unsure if it had all been a nightmare. But the station was dark, the equipment offline, and the phone line dead. I called the manager, but no one answered. Days passed with no response. Desperate, I drove to the station only to find it abandoned, equipment dusty, papers scattered, the building cold and silent. No sign of the staff or Evelyn. I checked the broadcast logs. Evelyn's call had lasted 13 minutes. The last words, "Help me," were recorded clearly. The strange part? Graybridge didn't exist on any map. That night, I heard the voice again, inside my head this time. It begged, "Find me." I started digging. Old newspapers revealed a town called Graybridge once existed, destroyed by a mysterious event in the 1950s. The radio tower was abandoned but rumored to be haunted. Locals said the tower's last broadcast carried a warning, a call for help from trapped souls between worlds. Determined, I drove to the old site. The tower was twisted, half fallen, surrounded by fog. As I approached, my radio crackled to life. Static. And then Evelyn's voice. "Help me." The tower pulsed with energy. Suddenly, a shadowy figure appeared, reaching out. I ran. Back home, the voices multiplied. Whispers in the static, voices on the wind. My broadcasts became plagued with interference, strange voices bleeding through the airwaves. Listeners called in, terrified, reporting shadows lurking outside their homes after hearing my show. One night, I broadcasted live, hoping to communicate, but the power cut out again. This time, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I turned, no one there. Then the whisper, "You're next." I fled, but the voices followed. The tower's signal reached farther than I thought. Now I'm hiding, broadcasting from a secret location. Every night the voices grow louder. I'm running out of time, because soon the last broadcast will be mine, and then there will be silence. After fleeing the tower, I thought I could escape the voices, but they were inside me now, whispering constantly, a static buzz that wouldn't stop. Every time I turned on the radio, the interference got worse. My own voice sometimes warped, twisting into something unrecognizable. Listeners started calling in with reports of strange noises and shadowy figures near their homes. It was like the tower's curse was spreading through the airwaves, infecting anyone who tuned in. One night, determined to confront whatever was haunting me, I decided to broadcast live from the tower site itself. I brought a portable transmitter, my recorder, and a handheld mic. As I set up near the rusted base, fog rolled in thick and cold. The air vibrated with static. My equipment crackled to life, and through the noise, I heard Evelyn's voice again, pleading and fearful. Suddenly, shapes began to form in the mist, dark figures reaching toward me, their faces blurred but full of despair. I tried to speak, but my voice failed. One of them whispered, "Join us." The fog enveloped me, cold and suffocating. I felt myself slipping away from the world, pulled toward some dark void. When I woke, I was back in my apartment, disoriented and breathless. The radio was on, broadcasting static and whispers. I realized I had become part of the broadcast, the last voice trapped between worlds. Now, every night, my show is a beacon, calling others into the darkness. And I'm powerless to stop it. I tried to shut it down, pull the plug, smash the equipment, but it was no use. The voices had taken root inside the signal, inside me. My broadcasts weren't mine anymore. They were a doorway. Each night, as I speak into the microphone, I feel the cold grip of the other side tightening around my soul. Listeners still call, drawn by the haunting static, desperate for answers they'll never find. And Evelyn? She's there too, trapped like me, a whisper lost in the endless broadcast. I'm no longer just a host. I'm the message, the last broadcast, and soon there will be no one left to listen. Let's move on to the next one. I had always been fascinated by lost places, abandoned towns, forgotten roads, derelict buildings swallowed by nature. So when I heard about Ravenswood, a village wiped off the map decades ago, I knew I had to see it for myself. Locals spoke in hushed tones, warning me to stay away. They called Ravenswood cursed, haunted by the memories of its vanished inhabitants. I didn't believe in curses or ghosts, but curiosity and a thirst for adventure pushed me onward. I packed my gear and drove down a narrow forest road. The asphalt quickly gave way to cracked dirt and gravel, thick trees pressing in on either side. The deeper I went, the heavier the silence became. Birds stopped singing, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. At last I reached the edge of the village. An ancient stone archway, cracked and blanketed in moss, marked the entrance. Beyond it, the village lay deserted, houses sagging and windows shattered or boarded up. Nature had already begun reclaiming the streets. Vines crept through cracks in the sidewalks and wildflowers burst from the gutters. Despite the eerie quiet, I set up camp in what I guessed was the town square. The moon was a thin sliver overhead, casting weak light over the ruins. As I unpacked, I sifted through a pile of yellowed newspapers I'd found scattered in one of the houses. Their headlines told a grim tale. A mysterious plague had swept through Ravenswood decades ago, wiping out nearly everyone. But something about the story didn't add up. There were mentions of strange lights, unexplained disappearances before the plague, and warnings scrawled in frantic handwriting. I was about to set the papers aside when I heard it, a faint whisper on the wind. I turned sharply, heart racing, but the village was still. Just the cold wind, or so I told myself. That night, as I tried to sleep beneath the skeletal remains of an ancient oak, my dreams twisted into unsettling images, shadowy figures moving just beyond my sight, faces morphing into masks of sorrow and anger, and a cold voice that murmured my name. When dawn came, the village felt different. The silence weighed heavier, the shadows darker. I decided to explore further, hoping to uncover more clues. I wandered down a cracked lane lined with empty homes. Most doors hung open or had been ripped from their hinges. Inside, I found signs of hasty departures. Broken dishes, rusted tools, children's toys scattered on floors. In one house, I discovered a faded diary. Its pages chronicled the last days of Ravenswood, the growing fear, the inexplicable sickness, and the creeping dread of something unnatural lurking just beyond the edge of town. A passage caught my eye. They watch from the woods. The plague is not the end. It's only the beginning. We are not alone. I looked toward the tree line. The forest seemed to close in tighter than before, branches shifting as if something moved just out of sight. A chill ran down my spine. I hurried back to camp. That evening, the whispers returned, this time louder, clearer. I swear I heard voices calling out, pleading, warning, mourning. I couldn't tell if it was my imagination or something else. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye. Between two collapsed buildings, a shadow shifted. It wasn't a person, at least not entirely human. Its form wavered like smoke, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Frozen, I watched as it melted into the darkness. I realized then the villagers hadn't just disappeared. Something had taken them or replaced them. I needed to leave. Packing in haste, I stumbled toward the archway, but the village seemed to warp around me. Streets twisted into impossible loops, and houses rearranged like a living puzzle. The whispers grew frantic, voices overlapping in a cacophony of sorrow and rage. Desperate, I ran, but every path led me back to the village square. In the center, the remains of a church stood, its stained glass windows shattered, the altar covered in strange symbols drawn in ash. Drawn to the altar, I found a carved box. Inside, skeletal remains held a pendant glowing with an eerie light. I slipped it around my neck. Instantly, the shadows recoiled. The village trembled, and a deep, resonant voice echoed through the air. Who dares disturb our slumber? Heart pounding, I spoke. I'm just passing through. I don't want to harm anyone. The voice responded, you carry the light. You can free us or join us. Before I could answer, the ground shook violently. The village began to dissolve into mist, the buildings fading like a dream. I found myself outside the archway, the forest silent once more. I glanced at the pendant. It pulsed softly. The whispers were gone, but the weight of the village lingered. And I knew deep down that Ravenswood's curse was not over. Let's move on to the next one. The voices in cabin 13. I wasn't supposed to be there. That's the part that haunts me the most. I wasn't supposed to even see cabin 13. I had booked a last-minute weekend getaway, just a quiet place in the woods, away from the city. The listing online showed 12 quaint little cabins around a private lake. It looked perfect. Quiet, remote, peaceful. When I arrived, the sun was just beginning to set behind the treetops. The gravel crunched beneath my tires as I pulled into the empty lot. The office was closed. A weathered sign hung in the window. Welcome. Your key is in the lockbox. Cabin 4. I found the box, entered the code, and took the key. As I made my way past the cabins, I noticed something strange. Cabin 4 didn't exist. Or at least the numbers jumped. 1, 2, 3, then straight to 5. The space between was overgrown and empty, like something had once been there and had been erased. I walked back to the office confused. Maybe I'd read it wrong. But then I saw it. A narrow trail I hadn't noticed before, barely wide enough for a person, winding into the woods. And there, about 50 yards in, hidden by trees, was a small, dark cabin. No number, but my key fit. And that was the first mistake. The place smelled of cedar and mildew, like it hadn't been opened in years. The furniture was antique, the wallpaper peeling in strips. Dust coated every surface, yet the bed was freshly made. Odd, but I was tired. I unpacked, made some tea, and sat on the small porch. The lake shimmered in the dying light, still as glass. I didn't see a single soul. That night I awoke to whispering, faint, close, inside the cabin. I sat up, heart pounding. The room was dark, but the sound was unmistakable. I thought maybe it was wind coming through the cracks in the walls, maybe animals outside. But then I heard it again, clearer this time. A woman's voice. "He's in my room." The whisper faded, replaced by something heavier. Breathing. Wet, ragged, strained. It was coming from the closet. I didn't move. I just listened. For nearly an hour. Eventually it stopped. The next morning I checked the closet. Nothing inside. Just an old coat and a cracked mirror. But when I closed the door, I noticed something carved into the wood on the inside. "Don't listen. Don't speak." It was written over and over. Deep gouges. Scraped in desperation. I almost left right then. But I didn't. That was the second mistake. That day I walked around the lake, hoping to clear my head. I passed the other cabins. All empty. All quiet. Except cabin 9. Its door was ajar. Curiosity got the better of me. I knocked, then peeked inside. The place was wrecked. Furniture overturned. Walls scratched. On the floor, written in what looked like charcoal, or something darker, was a single sentence. "The voice that answers isn't the voice that calls." I backed out slowly and returned to my cabin. That night, the whispers came again. This time, a man's voice. Soft pleading. "Please, don't leave me here." I shut my eyes tight, pulled the covers over my head, and waited for daylight. The third day I finally saw someone. A woman, older, standing by the edge of the lake. Her clothes were from another time, 50s maybe, and her hands trembled as she reached toward the water. I called out. She didn't respond, just stared into the lake as if seeing something deep beneath the surface. Then she turned. Her eyes were wrong. Glossy. Pale. Empty. And she whispered, cabin 13 wasn't supposed to open again. Then she vanished. Just gone. I didn't sleep that night. The voices grew louder. Angrier. I started hearing scratching inside the walls. Footsteps pacing the ceiling even though there was no second floor. I tried to leave. My car wouldn't start. My phone was dead. Not just no service, dead. Fried. The cabin seemed smaller somehow. The walls tighter. The closet door was always slightly ajar, no matter how many times I closed it. On the fourth night, I made a recording. Set my phone on voice memos and placed it on the dresser. The next morning, I played it back. Silence at first, then whispers, then a voice that chilled me to my core. He hears us now. He belongs to us. Followed by laughter. Not human. Twisted. My own voice appeared at the end in a tone I never remember using. It said, "I'll let them in." I packed what I could and ran. Down the trail, past the empty cabins. But the woods weren't the same. Paths twisted. Trees shifted. No matter which direction I ran, I ended up back at cabin 13. The door was open, waiting. I couldn't escape, so I stayed awake that night, staring into the mirror in the closet. Something watched me from the other side, its movements delayed, a warped version of me, smiling, whispering without sound. When I blinked, it didn't. I don't know how long I've been here now. Time moves strangely. Sometimes the whispers stop. Those are the worst times. That's when the figures come, crawling out of the walls, their mouths sewn shut, eyes wide with sorrow. They point at me. They know I opened the door. They know I listened. I can't leave, but you can. If you ever see a listing for a lake resort with 12 cabins, don't go, because there's always a 13th. And once you hear the voices, they never stop.